Vulnerability management is a staple capability of any modern information security program. In this week's episode, I'm going to show you how to set up a vulnerability scanner on our Raspberry Pi labs so you can get a little bit of experience playing with a vulnerability scanner, understanding what the outputs are from those scanners, be able to add it to your resume as another capability that you can bring to an organization. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm super excited to get back into a technical video this week where we're going to be getting our Raspberry Pi lab out, getting it wiped and getting it installed. Nessus recently released version 10.0 of their scanner, and they built out a Raspberry Pi ARM chip capable version of it, and that's what we're going to install this week. If you're new here, my name is Jerry Ozier. This is Simply Cyber, the YouTube channel designed to help you make and take a cybersecurity career further, faster. And on this channel, sometimes we talk to experts in the industry about careers, and sometimes we get hands-on technical labs just like this week. So if that's interesting to you, consider hitting subscribe and check out the other videos on the channel. We have a bunch of these Raspberry Pi labs. Also, stay tuned to the end because we're introducing a new weekly feature called the CyberSN Job of the Week, where I'm actually going to talk about an open position right now that you might be interested in applying for. And this one's a good one this week, $125,000 to $150,000 remote work job. So stay tuned to the end, but let's get into the actual lab. Now, if you don't have a Raspberry Pi, I'm going to drop links in the description below on how you can get it. But this is the same Raspberry Pi that we have been using in all of our labs, right? This is a Raspberry Pi 4. I think I have it right here for you to see. You can get it on Amazon. Raspberry Pi SC15184 Model B, okay? It's got, it's 86 bucks, so it's not super cheap, but we do use this Raspberry Pi in multiple labs, so you do get your money's worth, right? So you're going to need the Raspberry Pi. You're also going to need some SD cards as well. So what we've got is we've got our Raspberry Pi, we've got our SD cards, right? So the little, let's zoom in on that guy. Yeah, so we got a little 32 gig SD card. You go ahead and drop it in here, throw it into your computer so you can format it. And what we're going to end up doing is using the Raspberry Pi imager. So the very first thing you got to do is go to the Raspberry Pi website, which I'll put in the links below, and you get this imager, right? You select the Raspberry Pi OS, you select the SD card that you'll have plugged into your drive, and you go ahead, and if you hit Control-Shift-X, you'll get this pop-up, which allows you, I know it's hard to see, but it allows you to do some advanced configuration like the wire, set up SSH and Wi-Fi, which we're going to need to do. So just step through all of that. Go ahead and the right button will light up once you get this, and you'll re-image your Raspberry Pi. So once that's done, you simply drop the memory card into the Raspberry Pi, and we plug it in and let that boot up. Okay, so while the Raspberry Pi is booting up, let's get into the other technology that you'll need for this video, okay? So again, using the links below, you're gonna go to Nessus's website and download the Raspberry Pi image for the Nessus scanner, okay? Once that's downloaded, you're gonna have to bring up a couple screens here, command prompts, right? We love our command prompts, don't we, people? So check it out. We've got our downloads folder right here, and you can see this is in fact the Nessus install file, the deb file. So we've successfully downloaded it at this point, and we need to get it over to the Raspberry Pi. So let's do this. All right, so this is another command shell on our local machine. We're going to do SSH pi at, and then whatever the IP address is of your Raspberry Pi, right? Mine's going to be .109. Okay, so you'll have configured the username and password already when you're setting up the Raspberry Pi with that advanced configuration I showed you, Control-Shift-X when you're doing the imager. And now we're on our Raspberry Pi. Now, really quick, because Nessus uses a web browser for administration, we're going to have to remote in and not be able to operate from the command line. So a couple things you're going to want to do. You're going to want to run sudo apt update, right? You're going to want to do that just so the apt packages all get updated and everything's good to go. Then you're going to want to do sudo apt install tight VNC server, right? I've already installed it, so we're good to go. So we're on the Raspberry Pi. Oh, we're on the Raspberry Pi. Now we have to go back to our Mac in this case, or whatever your workstation is. You have to move the Nessus file from your machine over to the Pi, okay? I'm going to use secure copy, Nessus, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to put it on Pi, home Pi, okay? And this is simply just going to copy it over there. Okay. All right, so that's copied. So now we have, we've installed tight VNC server, but we need to start it, right? So if you do, I think just VNC server. Yep, so now that's running. You will need to download, sorry, you want to do VNC viewer. That's what it is, VNC viewer. Yeah, right here. Go ahead and download and install this, right? And essentially what you're going to get is you'll have to create a new connection, and you put in your IP address, and then :5901 is the listening service port for tight VNC. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and launch this. And you can see we're logged into this is our Raspberry Pi right now, right? So we've got, you know, the command shell here, and then we've got a GUI front end as well. Now you can see right here, this is the web browser. Okay, so we're going to use that in a second. But going back to the command line for the Raspberry Pi, if we go into here, you can see, I'll put this link below, but like basically you have to run this command, right? dpackage tac-i nessus, and this is going to install the package, the Nessus package, right? So let's do that really quickly. Right. Oh, you have to do sudo. Okay, whoops. Hold on, let's do sudo dpackage tac-i nessus. There we go. Okay. And this is just going to go ahead and install Nessus on the Pi. After that, we're going to have to start the Nessus service, which is this command right here, you can see. There we go. And you can see it says right here, to access the Nessus scanner, you're going to need to go to Raspberry Pi :8834, which is the port. But first let's get the service started, right? Oops, wrong button. So going back to the page over here, we see it's bin system CTL start Nessus D service, right? So bin system CTL start Nessus D.service. Authentication is required, so it's just there you go. So now the service is listening. Okay, let's go back to our VNC viewer, because now we're going to use the GUI. Okay, so let's go ahead and launch Chromium, which is this little blue circle up here. There it is. Okay. And just up here, it said Raspberry Pi, but I'm just going to do 127.0.0.18834. Okay, and I know it's hard to see. I'm not sure if I can zoom in on this, y'all. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, 8834. Okay. You can see the Nessus service is in fact up, and it's compiling plugins. All right. So hopefully you're following along. We've got our Raspberry Pi set up. We've got we downloaded the Nessus install, the Nessus executable, the binary from Tenable. We have got VNC viewer downloaded and installed. We're running tight VNC server on the Raspberry Pi, which allows us to connect with the VNC viewer to see the GUI of the Raspberry Pi. and we're running the Nessus server. So basically, the first time it gets set up, it has to compile the plugins and kind of set itself up. So let's give this a minute. Okay, so now it's presented us here with different options. You're going to want to choose Nessus Essentials. Nessus gives us, or Tenable gives us, a certain amount of free IPs to scan. So if you look right at Nessus Essentials, it's basically a free version of their tool up to 16 IP addresses. And again, this is really going to give us the ability to get our hands dirty, play with a vulnerability scanner, see what the outputs are, right? And again, be able to add it to our resume. So we're going to choose Nessus Essentials. I'm going to hit continue. Get an activation code. To receive an email with a free Nessus Essentials, enter your information below. Okay, so just fill this out. All right, so we filled it out and we've got our activation code. Oh no, I can't copy and paste across. Oh, that's brutal. All right, we have to create a Nessus administrator user account, use this name and password to log into Nessus. So we're gonna just name it. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna name it the same as my Raspberry Pi password and username so it's easier for me to remember. Okay, and now it's just going to download plugins. Let's give this a minute. Okay, so that took about 35-40 minutes to fully load, download all those plugins and configure them all. So just be aware of that. But once you're in, you're going to be presented with this screen, which is asking you for targets, which are essentially IP addresses. Now, in my network, you can see the Raspberry Pi itself is at 109, and then on my Mac computer, the IP is going to be 110, right? So let's go ahead and just configure this to scan my Mac. So this is scanning from my Raspberry Pi to my Mac. And this is just doing a discovery scan. Yep, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so let's run that scan. You can see it says starting scan. Let's see. No hosts are available. Oh, there it is. It's scanning now. Here. I don't know why I can't move my face out of the way, but if you can see, it's still scanning. This means that the Nessus scan's actively running. So this is good. So let's let that keep running. And you can see, you can check it while it's running. It's not really finding too much interesting right now, which is a bummer. Now we can configure another scan also while we're in here. Oh my gosh, guys. I'm just trying to move this window here. Oh, VNC, you fickle beast. There we go. So I can do new scan. And here's a couple of things I want to show you. You'll see all these different types of scan options. So basic and advanced, these are kind of your typical vulnerability scanner type ones. And then you can do specific like malware scan. Sometimes if you're looking for a specific issue, like let's say WannaCry is happening, or Bluekeep, or the 4 zero-day exchanges that happened in the beginning of 2021, like you can quickly run a specific scan. So this is like something you should be taking away. Like vulnerability scanners can be run just to find like missing patches, poor configuration, but can also be done for to identify if a very specific vulnerability, if you're at risk of, right? So if it's actively being exploited in the wild, management might ask you, are we susceptible to this? Also, you'll see it for compliance purposes. So I don't see it. Oh yeah, here it is. And these are all not available in the free version, but you can understand that you could do a PCI network scan, which would require, be required for PCI compliance. So you can start thinking about how vulnerability scanners can be used to achieve business objectives, right? So if you want, you can go in and do an advanced scan on whatever. Mac Advanced. And then I'll just do my 192.168.1.110, and this would be the IP of whatever your particular systems are. I want to point out too that you can click credentials, and with the credentials, you want to be able to provide these credentials so they can do log into the box and actually scan a little bit better on these machines, right? So my machine is this, and here's my password. All right, and then let's do it, right? And we're going to save it. And now we've got this advanced scan, Mac Advanced here, and then you can just run it directly from the screen, not the screen, but from this interface here. Now, this Mac Advanced is currently running, and we'll look at our basic network scan that was running before. Okay, so this is going to give us a chance to have this kind of conversation here. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. So we're going to look at the vulnerabilities, right? So these are found weaknesses on my MacBook. Now, look at, they're all info. Okay, so this isn't really that useful. When we do vulnerability scans, the vulnerabilities that are discovered are going to have different levels of criticality based on their CVSS score. And there's going to be critical, high, medium, low, and informational. The informational ones you can just disregard because that's what they are. They're informational. And looking at this scan, all of my results are just informational. So this isn't really an interesting scan per se, but just know that when you scan, you could get critical vulnerabilities, and the priority of that vulnerability, the criticality, is kind of in a vacuum, right? It's the CVSS score according to Tenable or Nessus in this case. But another thing that you can take with you and be able to say in an interview and stuff like that is that, a critical vulnerability on a machine that's in a lab somewhere that isn't really on the network, right? That's not really a big deal. Even though it's critical, it's not really a big deal. Critical vulnerability on a public-facing server, like a DMZ server or a web app server or something like that, that is a major issue, and that needs to be addressed immediately, right? So this is kind of the nuances of it. You can see here, like all of mine are info, so that's, again, not really that interesting. But I wonder if this Mac Advanced one didn't really do anything. I probably put in my password incorrectly. But hopefully, this has been useful. You guys can get up and running. Again, 16 IPs, so I would encourage you to drop in your home network, and go for it, right? Like, actually, let me do one more for you guys, and I'll see if I can get some more interesting stuff, right? So let's do a new scan. Let's do host discovery and all hosts, right? And I'm going to put in 192.168.1.0/24. Okay. Now this is my IP range, 256, like the last octet, all the IPs, and this is your network might be 192.168.0.0/24.1. You could have a 172, whatever it is. If you're not 192.168, then you likely understand networking and what you're doing, so you're good to go. So I'm going to just run this all host scan. Now, granted, it's only 16 hosts, and I probably have more than 16 hosts on my network, so I'm going to exhaust all my licenses right away with this thing. But you can see already right away. Let me zoom in for you guys. You can see already that it's found 28 hosts on my network. And whatever this is, look at all the ports listed in here, buddy. Jesus. Let's check this thing out. So it's just not really interesting findings yet, but there are a ton of... I'd be curious to find out what this system is with all these listening services. 135, that looks like a Windows box. I wasn't aware that I had a Windows box on my network. So these are the things you can find, right? So, okay. All right. So hopefully you've got your Nessus scanner up, you're scanning things, you're playing around, you're looking through it. Use this as an opportunity to build out a little bit of a practical experience with vulnerability scanners, vulnerability management, and then add it to your resume. Bring it up in a conversation, in an interview. When they ask, what do you do? Like Home Labs, be like, oh, I've set up Nessus vulnerability scanner on a Raspberry Pi. I've scanned my network. Like even for me, I don't even know what this .146 is with all these listening ports. So when I stop the tape, I'm going to have to investigate myself. But this is a great opportunity. Okay, and now it's time for our CyberSN Job of the Week. I'm super pumped to be doing this with CyberSN and Deidre Diamond, wonderful people over there. This job is a $125,000 to $150,000 open position, fully remote work, DevSecOps engineer. Like I said, it's in the financial service industry, which means it does pay well, right? 125, 150. 75% of your time is doing security engineering work. Now, you can look at it yourself. I'll put the link to this job in the description below. But 6 figures, and the tools and environment that you'll be working in, I've been telling you guys nonstop, like cloud is hot right now. Azure environment, right? Python, understanding a little bit of programming, right? Kubernetes, Puppet, which is DevOps. If you want to know more about DevOps, DevSecOps, check the video I did with Ashish Rajan in November of 2021 called DevSecOps Engineer. It tells you everything that you need to know about the job. But check out this position. If you are a programmer, if you understand DevOps and you want to work in DevSecOps and you want to make 6 figures, this position's open right now and it's fully remote. So there's no geographical requirement that's precluding you from doing this. So check it out. All right, well, that's going to do it. Let me know in the comments if you like the Job of the Week segment. I'm going to just try it out for a little bit. I hope you've gotten value out of this vulnerability scanner. If you're interested in some more projects with your Raspberry Pi, check out this video right here where we did a web application pen testing skill development, practical hands-on with our Raspberry Pi. Or if you're looking more like you're going to apply to this job, watch this video right here on everything you need to know about making your resume pop, okay? That's going to do it for this week. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.